Now, here's where I would like for you to address these issues in 3 areas, please. First, do you see the spontaneous, and that's what it is, the spontaneous combustion, mainly of young people, students, followed by some of the union leaders, the progressive lawyers, some of the intellectuals, going to the streets as creating a wildfire through all of the sectarian areas, including Syria and Jordan and Saudi Arabia and the Sudan, also in Algeria? Or do you see it not? Do you see, secondly, do you see the potential or probability or possibility that at any time in the near future, meaning 3 to 5 years, that the working class and the poor class in the United States, at that point, which will be about 240 million Americans, slightly above, at, or below the poverty level, could have a spontaneous combustion and go to the streets and protest in mass, or not? Have we no stomach for mass protests since we haven't done any? And lastly, do you see our administration, which is fully culpable in everything that is happening, since we have been almost the exclusive financial supporters of these major regimes, and therefore they have served our economic interest and our privatization and globalization interest? Do you see that the dilettantes from Davos and the talking heads of the Council on Foreign Relations, or the swanks over at the Trilateral Commission or Bilderberg, do you see any of these people at all acknowledging that it's their ideologies that have actually helped precipitate what's going on? The forum is yours. Please address these.
Yes, on the first one about the youth, the spontaneity, this combustion that just happened. If you go back to the middle of December, we sent out a synopsis of what our top trends for 2011 would be. And this was before the Tunisian riots hit the headlines, before the people hit the streets. And it was, one of the top trends is youth of the world unite. And we went on to say university degrees in hand, yet out of work, in debt, and with no prospects on the horizon, feeling betrayed and angry, forced to live back home. Young adults and 20-somethings are mad as hell, and they're not going to take it anymore. Filled with vigor, rife with passion, but not mature enough to control their impulses, the confrontations they engage in will often escalate disproportionately. We went on to say that government efforts to exert control and return the youth to quiet complacency will be ham-fisted and ineffectual. The revolution will be televised, blogged, YouTubed, Twittered. So we saw it coming. And we did not pick the Arab nations. We looked at this because what was going on over in Europe, off with their heads. They were screaming at the royal couple in the UK in November in response to the tuition increases of 200%. All of what's going on in the Arab nations, we said, as it started to break, they're missing the point. This is not a revolution that is going to just stop with those countries. After it hits Jordan, as it already is, and Yemen and Algeria and Morocco, the next stop is Europe. The people are angry. You know my saying, and it's universal. When people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. It's simple. This isn't about an ideology. And I hear these pundits, as you mentioned, about, we want democratic elections. This isn't about democracy. It's about the people having nothing as the rich keep getting richer all over the world, and the working people are being called upon to carry the burden. It's as simple as that. You even see newspapers such as the New York Times admitting to that. And then will the Harvard, Princeton, Yale clubs see it? No. They'll never admit to it. All this is, Gary, and what's going on in Egypt, and when you hear the arrogance of Vice President Biden coming out when these riots just began, saying that Mubarak isn't a dictator. You guys been in office for 30 years, a military guy at that. And then I looked up how long Biden's been, sucking off the public dole. He's been in for 36 years. These people they're totally removed from reality because they don't work. They just they're the lords of the manor, if you will. So they're not going to see what's going on. And I just want to note that as we're speaking, we're sending out at this moment a trend alert. And the headline is Revolutionary Fervor to Spread Beyond Arab States, Europe Next. And so that's what we see happening. And then we go back to three trends. I mentioned the Winter Trends Journal. Let's go back to the Autumn Trends Journal. Again, this happened before the incident in the UK. It was Off with Their Heads 2.0. And now we're going to go back to the Spring Trends Journal. And that was the Great War. What we have unfolding in front of us is the beginning of the first Great War of the 21st century. These are not isolated incidents, although they're being looked upon as that. As I mentioned, the same people that didn't see it coming are now telling us what's going to happen next, and they're isolating it to Arab and autocratic nations. It's not. You're going to see these are civil wars. Then they're going to go to regional wars, and then we're moving to the Great War. And here's the scenario. We had the panic of '08, which was the equivalent of the crash of '29. We are now seeing depression in Ireland, depression in Spain. Oh, there's no depression in Spain, is there? Oh, no, not with 20% unemployment rate, and the youth unemployment rate in all of these countries, on average, about 35 to 40%. So you look at the scenario. Now you're seeing currency wars. You heard the Brazilian economic minister, Manteiga, say, we're in a currency war. Next you see trade barriers. We are in the 1930s when all else fails, after the bailout bubble bursts, they lead you to war. That's where we're going to next.
Okay, look in the United States. What do you see happening here? Do you believe that we have a capacity for people going to the streets, or have we become distracted by bread and circus and do not have the will that others have, nor the youth in revolt mindset that others have around the world? After all, our youth are not living on $2 a day, as is the case in many of these other countries.
No, the youth in this country are not. They've been taught as young kids how special they were when they were small. And then they became amazing later on. And now they're holding these college degrees in worthlessness, and they're living home with mommy and daddy. So, no, they're not going to be taking to the streets. And then there's another level of hypocrisy. Let's listen to our President and Secretary of State and how they talk about how they don't want any violence coming from the military or the police. and how they want to keep the internet free in these other countries. In this country, you've seen it, Gary, during the demonstrations at the political conventions. You've seen it with the G20 meeting in Pittsburgh. These cops are goon squads in this country. They'll beat you down before you have a chance to stand up. You saw it in black and white and in full color. They had enough, these ninja mutant cops out there with enough body armor on them to go through the Battle of the Bulge unscathed in Pittsburgh, wielding their batons at co-eds. No, they're not going to let it happen here.
So you believe that what we've told Mubarak not to do, not to get rough on the demonstrators, you believe that this administration would do just the opposite. It would go out and just beat the hell out of anyone that was in front of it protesting against this regime's totalitarian or fascist policies?
Yes. I mean, again, look at the history. Look at New York. Look what the cops do when they have the demonstrations. As I said, look what they've done in Pittsburgh. And look what they just did up in Toronto.
And in Seattle.
With that G20 meeting.
In Seattle, in Miami, in Washington, in New York. So you're saying that we are hypocritical, that we tell another fascist regime, let people demonstrate, and then similarly we do not want people demonstrating on this watch. So you see that we will not have a public outcry, that we will meekly go forward allowing our civil liberties, our constitutional guarantees, our Bill of Rights to be eviscerated because we do not have the stomach for confronting people who have the overwhelming capacity to create fear, and they also could do anything under this current Homeland Security Act and Patriot Act that they wanted to with anyone protesting.
Precisely, and look what they've already done it. Obama has codified the Patriot Act, wireless wiretapping, rendition, and you know, when you talk about what's going on over there with their one-party dictatorial system over in Europe, Egypt, what do we have? We have a two-headed mafia that's been in control. As I said, when you start hearing people like Biden talking about Mubarak not being a dictator, look at these politicians in this country are nothing more than career politicians living in our that's a phony democracy. You know how difficult it is to run a third party in this country, all the barriers they put up. And let's look at Homeland Security. If you see something, say something. And now, you had Janet Napolitano, the czarette of the Homeland Security faction, put out this warning that if people see something in Walmart, to go rat the people out. They just got a guy recently for speaking on his cell phone in his car. He was a suspect. And when you go to YouTube and see Napolitano telling us that Homeland Security begins in our hometown, and she goes on and on, the only thing missing from that is a heavy 1938 German accent. So no, and what they're also going to do, Gary, is that there's going to be a terror strike in this country. It's not actually terrorism, it's called revenge. Look what's going on in Pakistan. The CIA are sending in predator drones virtually on a weekly basis. It's extrajudicial killings. It's against international law. They're killing, quote, suspected terrorists virtually every week. Do the math. You have almost 300,000 Pakistanis in this country. People and their families are getting killed. The South Waziristan, North Waziristan, Swat Valley, we saw the greatest refugee crisis because of the proxy war that the Pakistanis are fighting on behalf of the United States. So we're going to see something, and then they'll institute even more draconian laws. So the people in this country, we see it as it stands now, that they're going to fall in line.
Okay, Gerald Celente, thank you for your input. I appreciate it. We look forward to seeing if you were correct in the near future. I'm hopeful that you're not, but unfortunately up to this point you have been in all previous programs where we've discussed upcoming events. I look forward to our next conversation, Gerald.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.